It's space weather! By the way, viewers, we've begun the process of revamping the audio, and for today, we'll have it turned way down. Looking at the sun in 171 angstroms, a lot of interesting magnetic activity. First of all, I'd like to draw your attention to this area in the northwestern limb. It's a little bowl-shaped feature here. Magnetic fields holding plasma in place, and filaments dancing in the foreground. More filaments on the western limb. Looks like some minor ejecta coming out there. Also some activity on the rising eastern limb. Get a zoom in of that. No sunspots. There is a coronal hole magnetic connection which continues. And while the previous coronal hole's wind stream has dropped in intensity a little bit, that continues as well. Also, we've got high electron flux levels and some other new stuff to get to. New segment. There's the active region, not to be confused with a sunspot. And here are your magnetic field lines in 193 angstroms. Also, this view shows us very well that there's another coronal hole rotating in, very defined. Heading to spaceweathernews.com. We see only a tiny blip in the X-ray flux, otherwise flatlined. The BTBZ is much more toward the zero line here. A little bit of power there, nothing too crazy. And you can see this continuing phi angle signal here. That's the coronal hole magnetic connection. Also, you can see some downward spikes in the density here. And solar wind speed looks like it's around 530 or so kilometers per second. Magnetometer should be entering more of a normal cycle here, and that increased coronal hole wind speed has kept the KP off the floor. KP is now at 3 again, as it was yesterday when we did our video. Here's your forecast. Reflecting the crossing of the heliospheric current sheet, the change in charge, which you can see right here. Going from a more negative charge to a more positive charge environment. Electron flux was basically at storm levels last night, now dropping down. That's something to keep an eye on. And speaking of ions, not a lot of charging hazard, really. And the F2 ionosphere layer is looking a little on the discharge side. However, not super anomalous. We have some significant auroras, almost spreading down to the US, but not quite. And there's your aurora australis. Here's the Gong 2 view. Which now does reflect a full crossing of the heliospheric current sheet. And you can see the charge changing. And there's your magnetosphere movies. Your geospace activity. Here's the velocity. You can see some bands of solar wind coming in at different speeds. That's the coronal hole wind stream. Next, let's look at density. Basically what you would expect here also. A little bit of density spikes around the magnetotail. And here's your pressure. Often the most telling of these magnetosphere movies. Next, let's look at magnetic perturbations. Just please keep in mind we're going from ground to space on this. These are ground perturbations. And we can see some quite dense activity up here by Alaska, as well as stretching way down into Canada. Here it is over the globe. You can see some geomagnetism going right across the oceans. And a little bit of anomalous field out here in the South Pacific. Who's surprised by that? I'm not. We do have an earthquake uptick. And here's your geomagnetic perturbations over the poles at ground level. Some pretty anomalous blobs of magnetism all around the world. Moving on. And heading over to Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. We can see the sun splitting into pieces here at the end of this visible light animation. I'm really, really freaked out. Oh my gosh, the sun split in two. There was a small coronal mass ejection out of the eastern limb, which you'll see in the LASCO C3 movie. Right out in this area. Let that play through again. Small coronal mass ejection, not Earth-facing at all. And while we're here, let's look at the total electron content since it's been a little bit high. Apparently not too high over the US. Fun fact, this is used to calculate GPS errors. And so the two graphs you see here, over here, are telling you the position error in meters, which coincides with the total electron content. In other words, 10 meters of position error equates to about 60 electrons per meter -2 squared. Interesting article from Universe Today. We covered this the same day the cosmonauts made their crazy spacewalk that lasted, I forget what it was, 9 hours. The Russians have determined that this hole in the space station was drilled from the inside. And it sure looks like the kind of hole that was drilled from the inside. As you can see, marks over here trying to get it started with the drill bits scratching up the surface. It really kind of does look like a hole drilled from the inside to me. What do you think? Not a great piece of news here has implications to international relations, as U.S. astronauts are suspected of drilling this hole to get one of their colleagues sent home because he was sick. In any case, they've sealed the hole. And here's the cosmonaut Kononenko. And he has to be attached to a boom because this part of the space station has nothing to hold on to. He's basically just suspended out in the middle of nowhere. If you're scared of heights, don't do this. Initially attributed to a micrometeorite, which is even scarier, I think, than a hole being drilled, the hole was quickly determined to be the result of drilling. Posed no threat to the station or crew, but it did cause a small leak. Yeah, an air leak in a space station. They plugged the hole with epoxy and gauze. Okay, good news. Prokopyev dismissed rumors that the hole had been drilled deliberately, which had emerged as a result of a statement he made back in September. Well, that's a good thing. Anyway, we're not going to read the whole article here, but we will leave links below in the description. Next, let's look at a pretty significant uptake in earthquake activity. We're going to go back 10 hours on quakes.globalincidentmap.com. So a 4.5 in Greece, a 4.6 in Papua New Guinea at depth. Papua New Guinea, I don't think, ever comes off of earthquake alert. Iran gets a 4.2, Mayotte a 4.7. Now, we got some out in the ocean off of Alaska, which is basically a new thing. Show you where that's located. Two significant earthquakes out there in the Pacific. Whoops. I lost it. All right. Also, let's see, is that the same quake? That's actually the same quake. Although they do have different depths, they occurred at the same time, probably one quake. Afghanistan gets a 4.2 at a depth of nearly 200 kilometers, so that area should stay on alert also for a high level 4. Tonga gets a 4.4 magnitude at 338 kilometers. Quite deep once again. Tonga should stay on alert for a 5. Indonesia gets a 4.8. So significant uptick in earthquake activity, people. Argentina gets a 4.5 at depth, so they should stay on alert for a 5. Tajikistan gets a 4.2 at depth. Lots of deep quakes and lots of quakes in general. Carlsberg Ridge off the coast of Africa, near the African Rift Zone. The Reykjanes Ridge near Iceland. And more quakes just in the last hour in Alaska. Looks like the same kind of situation here. We've got 3 different quakes reported within 3 seconds of each other. So that seems like one quake to me. And let's do a new segment here. Kicking off the new segment with some information from phys.org about the Indonesian tsunami and the volcano which caused it, which lost 2/3 of its height. It used to be 338 meters, now it's only 110 meters. Those islands out there, they like to explode. Let's show you the map. Here's a satellite view, which looks like it was actually at the time. Here's what it used to look like. And there's what it now looks like. And it looks like there's tsunamis coming out of it. Super interesting. Links to this also. And let's have a rundown of the currently erupting volcanoes on Volcano Discovery, which of course we will also leave links to. Shivaluch volcano, is the most recent contribution, sending ash up to a possible 40,000 feet of altitude, injecting volcanic ash into the stratosphere, increasing the Earth's albedo and helping to cool the planet. We've also got Ducono, which is, I believe that's a 7,000 foot ash plume. Agung in Bali. Please bear with me, I'm not used to this website. In the past couple days, we've got Kamchatka. The Shivaluch volcano is just really active. Now Etna. We're going to look at the previous day rundown because we do these updates so early. There's Mount Agung. And there's your volcano update. Finally, let's look at 193 angstroms view here. Watch that coronal hole rotating in. And reminding you to please like and subscribe the videos if you enjoy the content. Please share on your social media. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. As the final hours of 2018 tick away, don't drink. And if you drink, don't drive. Or do drink and don't drive, or just don't drive.